Warning, this video that you are about to watch contains spoilers to Spider-Man No Way Home. As you can see by the title, it is a breakdown of Easter eggs and details. So, if you would like not to be spoiled, or if you are planning on watching this, please do not watch this video. Now, on with the video and hopefully you enjoy. Hello everybody, welcome back. As I said I would, here's a video of Spider-Man No Way Home breakdown video. Let's see how many things I have missed when I saw it. Of course, I could have missed something because watching so much of the movies, it was vaguely dark. And I mean dark as in hard to see at some parts. I don't think it was supposed to be like that. So, let's see what I've missed. Let's see what you guys missed. And let's go with the video. It looks like he's about to... Okay, Rick Boss, what do you
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Spider-Man No Way Home, a true Spider-Verse event that, start to finish, is a love letter to the web-slinger's full cinematic history, not only by bringing back past Peter Parkers, but in even subtler ways, echoing little moments that prove how, despite all these guys' different backgrounds, these dorks were destined to cross paths and rescue each other. So I'm gonna break this down scene by scene for everything you might have missed. And folks, I think I found more Easter eggs in this movie than I have in anything I've ever broken down on this channel in 5 years. Before we begin, you can celebrate Spider-Man No Way Home by checking out our awesome merch at newrockstarsmerch.com. We have this amazing new limited edition shirt, one of my favorite shirts Epic Hero Shop has ever made, called Strange Entanglement. I can't wait to get mine. It's gonna be my favorite Christmas gift. You can get yours at newrockstarsmerch.com. And thank you to Boxu for sponsoring this video. More on them later. Okay, the opening Marvel Studios title card has been updated slightly so that if you look closely on the whole of the R, replacing Rocket, who was in recent MCU titles, is now Peter Parker. The moment he came back through that portal to join Cap in Endgame, this movie will also make grown men cry, seeing Spider-Man arrive through portals twice. So we open immediately where Far From Home left off, the audio of the news broadcast of J. Jonah Jameson's Daily Bugle revealing Peter Parker's identity by Mysterio's doctored footage. Director John Watts recreated that 2019 scene to near perfect detail, before it ended by cutting off Peter's F-bomb. What the which itself was a callback to Aunt May's final line in Homecoming.
What the
But now a car horn censors out the word, and MJ is once again in her Joan of Arc shirt, but the three extras behind her are dressed exactly like the three guys behind MJ in the Far From Home scene. But the one major difference is that MJ now wears the broken black dahlia necklace that Peter bought her in Venice and gave to her in London.
I actually like it better broken.
This necklace is the key to Peter and MJ's relationship, because in the final scene, despite her memory of Peter being erased, something compels her to keep wearing that. Proof that she wasn't just with Peter because he was Spider-Man, and that she will wait forever for that I love you because she likes things better broken. Notice how one of the onlookers says, "You're just a kid?" Just like one of the onlookers on the train says in Spider-Man 2 when that Peter got unmasked.
He's just a kid.
Peter swings MJ through Times Square, where Jameson's inescapable broadcast includes an image of Peter's face half covered, as it often is in the Spider-Man comics, and they pass two billboards for Rogers the Musical, the Captain America musical from Hawkeye on Disney+. Peter lands MJ on the Queensboro Bridge, where they are spotted by passengers on the nearby Roosevelt Island Tramway, famous from the 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man film as the setting of the final battle where Green Goblin made Peter choose between Mary Jane or suffer the children. And then right after getting that Tobey era reference, we get an Andrew Garfield era reference when Peter thwips the manhole cover, recalling the very last time we saw Andrew Garfield on screen as Spider-Man. This is in front of Delmar's Deli in Queens, Peter's favorite spot that showed up in Homecoming and in a deleted scene Far From Home. But notice how it now reads Delmar's 3, for this being the third Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. Back in their apartment, Aunt May dumps Happy. Oh, but then they walk in on MJ and Peter declothed, calling back Aunt May walking in on Peter and Ned just like this in Homecoming. But John Watts shoots all of this in a full 2-minute long take to heighten that awkwardness, and kudos to these four actors because the timing is so precise. Like when Peter fails to close the window shade the first time, he then thwips it shut, which feels improvised, like Tom Holland screwed up closing it the first time, but then was just like, oh, Peter could thwip it, and then then they added in the VFX of the webbing after that. Also notice how Peter wears the same I survived my trip to NYC shirt that he wore in Homecoming as he came back home after Mr. Stark confiscated his suit. It's less baggy on him now because our little guy is grown up. The Daily Bugle broadcasts hammer away at Peter. You see a Daily News front page photoshopping mug shots using their yearbook photos and revealing MJ's name as Michelle Jones Watson. For the first time, adding the Watson like her counterpart Mary Jane Watson. Time magazine calls him Iron Man Jr. and shows him crying like a baby. In Touch Weekly calls him Two-Faced, and then Peter gets doused in green paint, while newsreel footage of Tower Bridge includes the ticker political turmoil continues in New Asgard. So I guess Valkyrie's rule over that colony in Tonsberg, Norway might be a bit unstable, something we could see more of in Thor Love and Thunder. Investigators recover the drones from Far From Home, linking them to Stark, giving investigators grounds to arrest Peter. The DODC returns, Department of Damage Control, who cleaned up Avenger messes in Homecoming, now led by Agent Cleary. Albert Cleary is the DODC comptroller in the comics. They take some evidence photos, showing a framed photo of Ned and MJ from the Homecoming dance. Interesting how Peter is not in that picture, though. Keep that in mind. We see Peter's Star Wars figurines. There's a photo taken of the Iron Spider charging station without the suit in it, though. And you see all that tangle of plugs into that one wall outlet. Also, we see the Edith glasses that Mysterio was trying to steal from him, and a bunch of PlayStation games, because Sony. During the interrogation, Peter wears the physics are theoretical, but the fun is real shirt that he wore in Spider-Man Homecoming when Tony Stark dropped him off back in Queens. Agent Cleary says Fury's been off planet for the past year. So Peter thought he was talking to Fury during Far From Home, but he was actually talking with the Skrull Talos, also confirming that the DODC is more aware of Fury's movements than most Avengers are. Also, that Agent Cleary just made my list of Skrull suspicious ahead of Secret Invasion. Because how else would he know that? Stark Industries, the company itself, gets swept up in the investigation, so I guess Morgan Stark's gonna have to go to public school. The file photo they use of Happy Hogan was his look from Iron Man 3 Prologue in 1999 when he had long hair and the bolo tie like Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction. And blowing our minds in the first 10 minutes, they get legal counsel from freaking Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock, Daredevil from the Netflix series.
Oh, no wonder I didn't recognize. I did not. I knew he was blind, but I didn't click with me that he was the Daredevil because I haven't seen the Netflix series. But it does make sense with its lightning fast reflexes, like when you caught that brick.
A crossover even crazier than Toby and Andrew in my book, because A, this is permanent in the MCU, and B, it presents wilder implications for the MCU, suggesting that much, if not all, of what we saw in the Netflix Marvel shows could now be MCU canon. And we just saw Cox's co-star Vincent D'Onofrio appearing as Kingpin in Hawkeye, and that finale episode will apparently give us some clarity on the exact canonicity of all those stories. But to be clear, this Matt Murdock is the superpowered Daredevil. A brick flies in through the window and he catches it with lightning fast reflexes, but I love how Peter's hand was also ready to catch that brick too, since he has Spidey sense. Also, fun fact, Jon Favreau played Foggy Nelson in the 2003 Daredevil. Cool! So they have to move into Happy's condo, where he swiped Tony's dumb E-robot that we saw in the first Iron Man film, also recovered in Iron Man 3, and we saw Happy yelling at it in Homecoming. Now, first on the TV, there are some people complaining about the new changes to the Statue of Liberty, which I agree. Why would you add Cap Shield to it? Also, while they're in the condo, Happy watches Downton Abbey, just as he did in Iron Man 3 when he was in recovery. And by the door, he has a bunch of spare security badges hanging. This was after he lectured everyone in Iron Man 3 that they have to have their one badge on them at all times. As Peter and MJ FaceTime, in MJ's room hangs her sketches of Peter with a rain cloud over his head, but also that one of Coach Wilson from Homecoming.
Why are you here? You don't even have detention.
Oh, I know. I just like coming here to sketch people in crisis. It's you.
There's also that same photo of her and Ned from Homecoming, again without Peter in it, and a photo of pigeons in Venice. And on the bed behind her, she is reading Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. In this conversation, Peter mentions his spider bite.
Ever since I got bit by that spider,
I've only had one normal week. 1 week where my life has felt normal.
only had 1 week where my life has felt normal.
This is actually only the second time in the MCU that Peter really referenced that bite after his chat with Ned in Homecoming.
You got bit by a spider? Can it bite me? Well, it probably would have hurt, right? You know what? Whatever. Even if it did hurt, I'll let it bite me. Maybe. How much did it hurt?
The spider's dead, Ned.
Betty Brant hosts the Midtown Morning News still, a job that she apparently also balances with being an intern for the Daily Bugle on TikTok. And she says, "Go get him, Tiger!" Mary Jane's catchphrase for Peter in the comics and in the past films. Also, you can hear someone in the crowd yelling, "Do a flip!" Just like that guy in Homecoming. Do a flip! who also came back in Shang-Chi. The protester signs include several pro-Mysterio ones, one calling Peter Devil in Disguise. So this movie's premise is loosely based on the Spider-Man One More Day comic, in which Peter goes to Doctor Strange in search of a spell to make everyone forget that he's Spider-Man, but ends up having to turn to a little girl who is revealed as Mephisto to do this instead, and actually ends with a similar reset as this film, in which Peter's identity is a secret once more, but at the cost of his relationships with MJ and with his friend. It was a very controversial comic when it came out, but like many great MCU movies, it turned a pretty divisive comic storyline into a really great work of cinema. In the crowd, there's also an MJ supporter. This is a cameo by Darnell Applin, an actor and Zendaya's real-life assistant. Flash has published a tell-all book called Flashpoint, which is probably a nod to the DC Comics preceding timeline crossover event, with Barry Allen meeting alternate versions himself and of Batman, which is being adapted into another cross-franchise event with The Flash in 2022. The school's mural of great inventors throughout history that showed Howard Stark in Homecoming has also now added the faces of Abraham Erskine, who is the inventor of Cap Super Soldier Serum, as well as Hank Pym in the upper right corner. Coach Wilson, Mr. Dell, and Mr. Harrington greet Peter with a display case of Peter's academic decathlon awards.
Where did they get the sculpture, though?
And his blazer. There's also a photo of Peter and MJ in Venice, where it looks like Mr. Harrington might have pasted himself in from one of his selfies that he took then. Later on the rooftop, MJ reads a New York Post. That is the salacious tabloid that they actually based the earlier Daily Bugle designs on, reading Peter Parker and his spider minions, showing Peter puppeting Ned and MJ. Below reading, his hypnotic spider senses seduced Jones Watson. Male spiders actually do release hypnosis-like pheromones, and ironically, Peter does allow MJ and Ned to be brainwashed, but to forget about him. Peter rolls over to kiss her, and the textbook that he rested his head on was chemistry. I see what you did there. I thought we wouldn't notice, but well, we did. Also written in graffiti on the background is Ditko, a reference to Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. Peter gets rejected from college after college. Dumb E gradually reassembles Peter's Death Star until the MIT one comes in and Dummy just breaks it, just like Ned did. And all three of the friends get rejected, which is a bummer because MIT is Tony Stark's alma mater, where he handed out scholarships in Civil War, and where future Ironheart Riri Williams goes to school. The witch string lights actually have little goatees, making them little Doctor Stranges, giving Peter the idea of what Avenger to return to, and we hear the notes of Doctor Strange's theme here that leads Peter to 1778 Bleecker Street, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Inside, one of the shoveling apprentices is played by Emily Fong, who worked production on Infinity War, Endgame, Shang-Chi, and Black Widow. Wong arrives and explains how one of the Rotunda gateways opened to Siberia and let a blizzard in. We saw those gateways in the 2016 film. I will say, the production of this movie went to an insane amount of effort to freeze over the Sanctum for just a, left the door open to Siberia gag. I'm wondering, with those floodwaters pouring into the Sanctum and the Multiverse of Madness teaser, this may be a bigger indicator of this reality destabilizing. Strange floats in wearing a Columbia University.
Yeah, the scene was a bit darkish. Not like, this is a lot lighter than what I saw, so...
University hoodie. Columbia is his alma mater. We see another one of these hoodies floating by the laundry machines downstairs, and he's carrying a mug reading, "Oh, for Fox's sake." We learn that Wong actually holds the rank of Sorcerer Supreme since Strange blipped for 5 years. Since WandaVision told us that Scarlet Witch's powers surpass those of the Sorcerer Supreme, that might mean Strange might be even lower on that sorcerer hierarchy than we thought and might need her help even more. Strange says that Peter's request to reverse time is selfish, plus the time stone was atomized. But Peter says, quote, "It's not about me. I mean, this is really hurting a lot of people." In doing so, Peter uses the same words that the Ancient One used in her crucial lesson to Strange.
It's not about you.
And so, Strange agrees to help him, using a spell called the Runes of Kafkal. Not sure the spelling, but Kafkal isn't from any of the comics that I know of, but what Wong says, the memory wiping spell travels the dark border between known and unknown reality.
So that was the black, like, the multi-yakai.
Suggesting that to enact this spell, you have to kind of bridge with other realities of the multiverse. And he leaves them through a portal. You can see that bell tower in the background. That's actually in the Kamar-Taj courtyard. Strange explains how the Sanctum is built at an intersection of cosmic energy currents, that they weren't the first to seek this out, with walls thousands of years old, and that they shot an episode of The Equalizer there in the 80s. The spell goes crazy, and Peter shouts, "Basically, everyone who knew that I was Spider-Man before should still know." That is the rule by which characters get warped into this reality, also suggesting that Kirsten Dunst, Mary Jane, both Harry Osborn, several others might have also been briefly walking around in the MCU, but also tells us that Venom, through his multiversal symbiote hive mind, must have known that Peter...
Yes, this part, because hive mind.
He's Spider-Man, though I didn't know when Electro found out that Peter was Spider-Man, unless there's some kind of Spider-Man Mandela effect that I'm suffering from. It's possible. As this purple void surrounds them, Strange sees a glowing silhouette that looks like the glowing arms of Doc Ock, him being one of the characters that are currently spilling into this reality. So Strange has to encase this spell in a prism, similar to how Strange in What If encases Killmonger, Infinity, and Zola Ultron in a prism to contain that reality rupturing chaos. But this prism is a dodecahedron, which is made up of pentagons with 5 sides and 5 corners because Peter changed his spell 5 times. Strange thought it was 6, but if you listen back, Peter changed it for MJ, for Ned, for Aunt May, for Happy, and then for everyone who knew. That's 5. So what was the 6th? Well, the 6th may have been a secret change by Doctor Strange so that he would still remember Peter because he loves him. At least that's my theory. Peter suits up in the Iron Spider armor, using extra wings to glide the bridge, and inside his heads-up display you can read up in the corner, Edith offline. Also, the voice has changed to male.
Well, that would be true because, again, the property has been seized and all that stuff for that, so, you know, be offline.
And that's because the DODC has confiscated and disabled all the drone network. It's interesting that they did not take this Iron Spider suit too, but again, when they raided his place, that suit was not charging in the port. So I don't know, maybe Peter tried to flush the nanotech down the toilet. Now on this bridge, there are a ton of license plates, and I can tell you folks, I looked at all of them because John Watts loves to hide Easter eggs in his license plates. But the only ones I could actually decode to mean anything were a Nissan with SEYS1DP, and earlier there was an anagram book on Peter's shelf, so this plate rearranges to Spideys, plural, which could be a clue for multiple Spideys being in this movie. And of course, the MIT woman's car is 63A5M3 or 63ASM3 for 1963 Amazing Spider-Man number 3, the comic debut of Dr. Octopus, who arrives in the scene, played once more by Alfred Molina from the 2004 Spider-Man 2. He looks awesome. Composer Michael Giacchino samples Danny Elfman's Doc Ock theme from that film, and as his claws smash through this bridge, note that the claws light up red, which in that 2004 film was how we knew when the claws were controlling Otto's brain. So this must have happened before Peter converted him, at which point the lights flickered back white. Doc Ock brings up his machine here, his fusion device that he was working on in the movie.
What have you done with my machine?
And he quotes his line from the 2004 film, his whole goal.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Now, at one point, you'll notice Peter webs one of the claws to a car door to make it harder for Doc Ock to grab anything else to throw at him. Doc Ock pries off some of Peter's nanotech, which then absorbs onto his arms. So if you remember back to the first Raimi film, Norman Osborn was an expert on nanotech.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
I read all your research on nanotechnology. Really brilliant.
And in the sequel, Octavius built his arms using Oscorp tech.
I'd like to thank Harry Osborn and Oscorp Industries for providing it.
And he explained how he controls these arms using a neural link.
These smart arms are controlled by my brain through a neural link. Nanowires feed directly into my cerebellum.
And since the Stark nanotech is controlled neurally as well, that would allow Doc Ock's tech to be compatible with it. However, that link goes both ways, so Peter is able to pair with the arms and control the arms remotely. And then Otto snaps at his arms saying, "Listen to me," calling back what he said at the end of the 2004 film.
Listen to me now.
Then Green Goblin swoops in, but Doctor Strange portals them back to the crypt where the lizard is already contained. Doc Ock asks Strange if this is a birthday party, just like Tony Stark referenced Dr. Strange's Jimmy Kimmel bit when they first met.
What is your job exactly besides making balloon animals?
Peter enlists MJ and Ned. Ned asks Dr. Strange,
"How did you know you were made of magic? Because my Nana says that we have it in our family, and sometimes I get these tinglings in my hands."
You should talk to your physician.
And later, Nana's home has a display of ancient blades, and Ned successfully operates the sling ring, which surprises Strange. So yes, it really does seem like Ned might have a future as a sorcerer in the MCU. Then down in the Undercroft, there's all kinds of creepy goodies. A doll turns its head at them. In the fridge are a bunch of creatures, a floating eyeball in a jar, a claw creeping out from under foil. MJ finds a goatee guard that Strange must use to get his goatee perfectly shaved. And then MJ goes on TikTok to find people on homemade gliders replicating Green Goblin. Another with a frost giant cosplay that reads, "I am the Green Elf." And then at the end of this, they're finally able to track down Electro, where Peter also finds Sandman battling Electro with his suit turned inside out. Sandman helps Electro, where Peter also finds Sandman battling Electro with his suit turned.
Oh, that was turned inside out. It looks like Black Panther almost.
Inside Out. Sandman helps Peter because they were on good terms at the end of the 2007 film, but Electro, Jamie Foxx, now has a new body looking a bit cooler. And while Dr. Connors later calls it out since they didn't know each other while they worked at Oscorp in the same continuity, this new body is never really explained in the movie. Meanwhile, Willem Dafoe, Norman Osborn, my favorite actor in this movie, argues with his goblin helmet, just as he would in the 2002 film, but the argument ends with him shattering the helmet, but even after it shatters, the goblin voice laughs, meaning breaking that helmet did not destroy the identity, it just fused it in.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the Green Goblin, it's like he's in control, and then when he feels threatened, he comes out. Like when Peter was about to cure him, he didn't want to. But, like, otherwise, when he feels the save there, he goes back to, he pulls back Osborn in. That way it makes him look innocent. Until he has the right moment to come out to do his bidding of evil. So it's kind of like a multiple personality disorder, except it's not because he injected that stuff, which gave him the said thing in the first place. Otherwise, he never had a multiple personality disorder.
Into Norman's soul. Notice the framing of this broken mask as Norman walks away matches the framing of Tobey Maguire Peter leaving his suit behind in the garbage can in the 2004 film, but in both cases, the characters get dragged back into the game. You know, as I am looking for all these details, I like to keep my snack game going, but I'm tired of the same service that delivers pre-box soup 100-year-old family snack makers for genuine and authentic selections. The first box that you get is called Seasons of Japan, and it lets you taste the seasonal flavors that are popular in Japan. This month, we got fancy and upgraded to this limited edition handcrafted Kiribako wooden box. Let's see what's inside. So cool. You start off with this Kanto New Year culture guide that tells you everything that's in here. Oh, and I got these little gummies. These are so good. Look at these, look at these. They're just like yummy, sour, strawberry flavor. You honestly don't find anything quite like this anywhere else. I love them. They're little hearts, which mean they love me back. There's all kinds of stuff in here, like little chocolate snacks, little puff things. But yeah, each box suit comes with a beautifully designed booklet that tells you all about the snacks, where they come from, and each month features new curations centered around a theme. I am lucky to have traveled to Japan in the past, but if you have someone in your life who longs to travel but might not be able to right now, this is an awesome gift idea. It's also just a great gift for people who love snacks. And you would also be giving them the chance to win 2 free tickets to Japan because Boxu is having a giveaway. Everyone who subscribes before December 31st is automatically entered. So if you want to try some awesome Japanese snacks and help support our channel, off your subscription. Peter returns to the Feast facility. That's the homeless center where Peter works in the comics and in the games. Someone tagged the sign outside with Mysterio was right and a green circle over Peter's head, just like Mysterio's fishbowl helmet. Inside, Norman plays a convincing, mentally disturbed man saying, "Someone's at my house. Oscorp doesn't exist. My son." And he trails off, referring to Harry Osborn, of course, but also telling us that Oscorp, at least any company named that, is not currently in the MCU anywhere. Notice how he wears a green coat over those purple sweats, Goblin's colors. Meanwhile, Aunt May's costume is worth looking at. She's wearing a blue jumper with a red sash that could be foreshadowing the bloody wound that causes her death. Aunt May tells Peter to help Norman. Peter says this isn't my problem, which she gets mad at him over because it recalls Tobey Maguire Peter's fateful decision not to intervene, which led to
which was also in Andrews. It's not my problem.
Uncle Ben's death.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
J. Jonah.
It's like whenever someone in the Spider Universe mentioned with great power comes great responsibility, that line is a death line to whoever says it. Uncle Ben, and Aunt May. And which follows after, it's not my problem. Once you hear those two lines, you know whoever's gonna say power comes with great responsibility is gonna die. I'm sorry, I'm looking over here from OBS. I forgot to move it over. Yeah, let me do that. There we go. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why it overlays it now, so
Jameson's upgraded Daily Bugle show, which is really thanks to his Spider-Man coverage, now pushes supplements, which is another jab at Alex Jones. The Chiron reads, "Why does Spider-Man hate national monuments?" recalling the Washington Monument in Homecoming and Tower Bridge in Far From Home. Meanwhile, Otto Octavius recalls the moment he warped, saying he had Spider-Man by the throat, so this must have happened right before Tobey changed him in this moment in the film.
These things have turned you into something you're not. Don't listen to them.
It was my dream.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
You're right.
Meanwhile, Max talks about being absorbed into the grid, about to turn into pure energy, recalling the Amazing Spider-Man 2 when Peter and Gwen hardwired Electro to that grid and overloaded his chip. And then Lizard asks Max if he dies, but he never gets an answer, and that's because Lizard doesn't actually die in the 2012 film. He ends up locked up and approached to join a future Sinister Six. So Strange shows them the box, the Machina Dichotomus, in Latin roughly the division machine, which he could use to send them back to their universes. But Peter and Strange debate over this. Strange says, in the grand calculus of the multiverse, their sacrifice means infinitely more than their lives. The subtext, of course, being his guilt for sacrificing Tony Stark as part of his complex calculus from seeing 14,605 future outcomes to defeat Thanos. If you think about it, calculus was also the type of arithmetic on He Who Remains chalkboard. And I just find it interesting that Peter overcomes Strange by doing simpler geometry. It's still super nerdy, just not overthinking it, doing as much 4D chess as those guys are. So Peter snatches the box and Strange pursues him, trapping him between portals so that he whips his own foot. I love it. But then he brings Peter back to push his astral soul from his physical body, similar to how the Ancient One did to him. However, Peter's soulless physical body still manages to evade Strange. Interesting. This must be a higher form of the Spidey sense, which would be a neurological reflex that is divorced from Peter's conscious mind, but it also shows us how this is really linked to a kind of metaphysical magic. And later in the movie, Andrew Garfield Peter does say magic's real here too, so he might be aware of that link as well. Strange sends the Cloak of Levitation after Peter, giving us that What If Spider-Man Became the Sorcerer Supreme image from the comics that we also saw in the zombie episode of What If. I love this detail. On a nearby newsstand are People magazines with Liz Allen, Peter's crush from Spider-Man Homecoming, daughter to Adrian Toomes' Vulture, calling Peter a liar, showing us that family, including Vulture, is still somewhere in the multiverse and gonna show up in Morbius. Don't know how that's gonna make sense. Strange traps Peter in the mirror dimension. The VFX are incredible. Peter tumbles past the High Line in New York City, which Kate Bishop actually just recommended to Yelena in Hawkeye. He tumbles through a department store where you can hear Christmas music playing. Peter tumbles toward the Bethesda fountain in Central Park. It actually looks like the Angel of Water statue might have, like the Statue of Liberty, been swapped out for an Avenger. Strange traps Peter in an endless loop of portals, creating the illusion of infinite Spider-Men, as there are. And then Peter recognizes from the Archimedean spiral that he can geometry the shit out of this and trap Strange in a web of math. And again, if you want a way to really celebrate this awesome magic versus math moment, you gotta get your hands on our exclusive Strange Entanglement shirt at newrockstarsmerch.com. Norman offers to help Peter, saying, "You know, I'm something of a scientist myself." Of course, his line from the 2002 movie.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Peter and Ned do their recurring handshake, and it ends with the sling ring sparking a bit, a little sign that Ned does have a kind of inner magic to him. Peter takes them to Happy's condo. The security feed glitches as Electro passes from its interference, and then Otto snaps, "I don't need fixing, especially by some teenager using scraps in a bachelor's junk drawer. It's not a drawer full of scraps, it's a box of scraps!" On the walls of Happy's room, you can actually see the name Slott. That's a reference to longtime Spider-Man writer Dan Slott. Peter activates the Stark Tech Fabricator. We saw this kind of device used on the Stark jet to design his new suit in Far From Home. It's powered by an arc reactor. This is a familiar design. This is the new Element Arc Reactor Mark I with the triangular inlay that Tony Stark constructed using the new element he rediscovered in Iron Man 2. I love that this is the era of arc reactor he used, because in Spider-Man Homecoming, they specifically had the Mark 42 armor that was using that same generation of arc reactor from Iron Man 3 on the Stark jet. So that would be the one that Happy still has in his possession. Meanwhile, Otto and May share some water in the kitchen. They did briefly date in the comics. Then Peter designs a new inhibitor chip for Doc Ock to replace the one that got fried in the 2004 film. And he puts in place these 6 needles that go into Otto's skin and fuse with the spinal cord. I love how they use the same exact production design from the Raimi films for all of these pieces of technology. They really clearly did their homework to look at how all of these things function. At this point, point, the red lights on Doc Ock's claws flicker back to bluish white, and he transfers the nanotech back to Peter to give him this golden spider, 8 arms, just like his own. It's like giving him a badge of honor there. Otto encourages his buddy Norman that he's about to rid himself of his darker half, but Norman, facing away from him, says, "Just me." And Defoe uses his darker goblin voice in this moment, meaning it is only goblin in his mind right now. And so Peter's spidey sense kicks in, and he just kind of wanders around the condo. It's super creepy, and notice as it begins, the first person to appear in his periphery is Norman Osborn. And the first thing Peter says is, "May?" It's his instinct telling him that Norman will pose a fatal threat to May. And so Peter whips Norman to dummy, which, as they came into the condo, you can see Norman in the background casing. So Goblin makes his case to the other villains. These are not curses, these are gifts. Recalling the final lines of the 2002 film, the lesson that Tobey Maguire Peter learned.
This is my gift. My curse.
When Peter had to rationalize his powers as both a gift and a curse. The fight breaks out. Peter punches Goblin, and Goblin just smiles more and more. He is loving it. Combat is just so brutal. Apparently, Willem Dafoe insisted on doing as many stunts as he could himself. And downstairs, Goblin's glider strikes May, and now that creepy face is covered in a hobgoblin-style hood, and he tosses a pumpkin bomb, which Peter bats away, showing how this Goblin is just as willing to bomb an Aunt May as he was in the 2002 film. And as she dies, May says the immortal words of Uncle Ben, "With great power, there must also come great responsibility." Yeah, there was a slight rewording, and that's because she said the original comic wording of the line that includes "there must also come" directly from Stan Lee. Folks, that hit hard. So to cheer us up, Ned uses the sling ring to portal to one of the other Peter Parkers currently in this universe, Spider-Man Andrew Garfield, a guy no one will ever believe again in interviews. Notice the music in this moment is actually James Horner's Young Peter theme from the Amazing Spider-Man film in 2012. And we just gotta pause and appreciate how great the Andrew Garfield era of the Spider-Man suit was. I mean, it's definitely my favorite aesthetically. Great shade of blue, huge eyes, and a true DIY practicality to it. One thing that era nailed. But then Ned portals again, and Tobey Maguire Peter Parker steps in, his entrance set to Danny Elfman's Spider-Man theme. And we gotta credit both Maguire and Garfield for so deftly slipping back into their mannerisms. Tobey is preemptively polite and dopey. Andrew is post-mistake apologetic and super chatty. And I also like how their first instinct upon seeing each other is to whip attack, as if the last time either of these guys encountered a doppelganger, it might have been a hostile situation. Tobey Peter says that he liked to hang out atop the Chrysler building, as we saw his Peter perch in the Raimi films. Andrew Peter says he liked the Empire State Building for the view, but they find Peter on the rooftop of his school in Queens. It's not about the view, it's about a refuge from his high school life, because he never moved into the city. Andrew Peter starts to say he has some understanding of losing someone, of course referring to letting Gwen Stacy die, and he goes on.
But, I noticed when that happened that if you look at it very carefully, her head hits the ground first. So, wouldn't that mean that, because she had a bloody nose also. So it wasn't the whiplash that killed her. I mean, it would have probably killed her regardless. But I think her head hitting the ground is what killed her first. Because if you look at that, you can hear that thud when the head hits. That fast, that hard, would kill anyone. If not give them a concussion or something. Well, I think that's what, because, like, again, she had a nose, like, blood coming out of her nose. That wouldn't have happened with the broken spine or so. So I'm thinking the head. So he didn't necessarily kill her. And plus, if you think about it, she knew what she was getting into. You don't tell a girl no. They don't take no for an answer, first of all. Haha. But, if you notice that he tried to keep the promise to her dad. He tried his best. He broke up with her, but that didn't last. But if you think about it, she insisted. I mean, yeah, she did save Peter from Electro, but at the same time, he tried out everything in his power to keep her away. And she insisted to help. So, in a way, she knew what she was getting into, but she knew it was going to be dangerous. They didn't know Green Goblin was going to show up, but still, she knew it was going to be dangerous. So she walked into that on her own accord. So, she did it knowing the risk. That was kind of on her, more so than Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, along with the head getting hit. So it's kind of her own fault for dying. It wasn't his fault, but he feels guilty.
On to describe what happened after Gwen's death, how he stopped pulling his punches and got rageful and bitter. So apparently in that Garfield continuity, this Spider-Man might have straight up killed people, which is an insane revelation. I'm gonna explore all that in another video. But Toby Peter recounts the vengeance that he felt that led him to track down Uncle Ben's murderer, and how in Spider-Man 3 that wound was reopened with Flint Marko and exacerbated by Venom, a critical lesson that he had to learn. And all three recognize the words, "with great power comes great responsibility," making that proverb a kind of constant absolute point among all the Spider-Men. They return to the high school and work together to engineer cures for all of them. I love how nerdy the second half of this movie is. Toby Peter tells Ned that his best friend died in his arms after trying to kill him, referring to Harry Osborn in Spider-Man 3. Meanwhile, Toby Peter tells Andrew Peter that he and Mary Jane eventually made it work. Ned calls for Peter, and all three of them look up, confusedly pointing at each other. Of course, a nod to the meme. Awesome. And Toby Peter shows how his webbing, unlike the others who use mechanical web shooters, comes freakishly out of his wrists. I love how Andrew plays super grossed out, and even when...
But yeah, because I've always wondered why those two needed web shooters. It just really never got me hooked on their Spider-Man series until like... But I've always wondered why would he need web shooters if the original had it out of his hand. But then it occurred to me, different spiders, different ability. Yes, all same of climbing ability, wall and all that. But their two spiders, Andrew and Tom, didn't come with the web shooting part. So they had to make their own webs, which made more sense, and which kind of implemented that it was able to do like the electric webs, taser webs, or you know, all those like web mechanic bombs, web bombs and stuff, like how the Spider-Man in PS4 can do with his webs. So it kind of like it made sense, and my friend chose it to like the amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield one, but I don't know why it seemed that bad. But he has his reasons.
Tom Holland moves the conversation along. He even continues staring at Toby's wrist for a beat before he's like, oh, okay, yeah, what? And then on to the showdown at the Statue of Liberty. Toby Peter's back tenses up, a callback to Peter hurting his back in the 2004 film, which itself was an inside joke about how Toby nearly sit out of the sequel after hurting his back on Seabiscuit. And then Andrew cracks it for him, for once cracking someone's backbone without killing them. Toby talks about how he fought an alien made out of black goo, of course referring to Venom, his Eddie Brock played by Topher Grace, and setting up Tom Hardy Venom's arrival in the post-credit scene. And then Tom Holland Peter talks about how he fought Thanos, and then Andrew's like, oh, I'm lame. I only fought a Russian guy in a rhinoceros suit, of course referring to Paul Giamatti's Rhino. But I love it. Toby Peter talks him up, saying he's actually amazing, giving Andrew Garfield the credit he deserves. Despite his amazing Spider-Man era often ranked the lowest by fans, he's still amazing, and now he's got his brothers. But I love how the first time these Peters try to work together, it totally fails, since they are more used to being solo acts. So while Andrew and Toby teach Tom how to mourn and to forgive, Tom teaches them the one thing his era of Spider-Man had that theirs didn't: cooperation with superheroes more powerful than he is. At one point, Toby just straight up screams, "How is this helping?" And Andrew Peter asks if the Avengers are a band, calling back when Bruce Banner asked if the Avengers broke up like the Beatles.
The Avengers broke up. We're toast.
Like a band? Like the Beatles?
But they're able to figure it out, and a little subtle detail here that I loved. During their heroic swing, Tom Holland Peter whips to his two brothers to sling them back up with him, so that the three of them can leap together off the Statue of Liberty head right at Electro and Sandman and Lizard. Meanwhile, you see how Electro's bolts at one point fire up in a star shape around his head.
Yeah, I did miss that part, because again, it was a bit dark. Thanks to one to the movies. That's the only option that I could watch it. There was this one that Dakota had that when he was watching it before we went to one to the movies, you know, but it was buffering a lot. But at the same time, would probably been better to deal with the buffering and the darkness. But yeah.
like Electro's mask in the comics. Toby Peter manages to revert Thomas Hayden Church Flint Marco. I love how that device lights up and spins the same way the Super Collider did in Spider-Man 3. Then Lizard jumps into the portal with Ned and MJ, thrashing around that science lab, evoking that school battle in the 2012 film. But then Doc Ock helps them fix Electro, and they hit Lizard with the same serum gas that they used as the reigning antidote at the end of the 2012 movie, reverting him to Rhys Ifans' Dr. Connors. And Max Dillon tells Andrew Garfield Peter that he thought he was going to be black, and that there's got to be a black Spider-Man somewhere out there, definitely setting up Miles Morales to step up sometime soon, hopefully, since we do know from Aaron Davis's lines in Homecoming that Miles Morales does exist in the MCU.
I don't want those weapons in this neighborhood. I got a nephew who live here.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Miles. I'm not gonna make it.
Then Green Goblin dives in, snarling, "Can the Spider-Man come out to play?" Calling back his creepy line to Tobey Maguire Peter over the phone in the 2002 film.
You gotta love that.
Can Spider-Man come out to play?
And he bombs the box, causing the spell to spill out around Liberty Island. I love how the VFX caused that tear to turn something that should be in the deep background feel like a canvas that is way closer to us. And in this chaos, MJ slips and falls from the scaffolding, the framing exactly matching Gwen Stacy's slow-mo death drop in 2014, scaring the hell out of all of us. Tom Holland Peter dives after her, but he gets swiped by Goblin, so it's up to Andrew Garfield Peter to step up to catch her, redeeming his failure to save Gwen, but they do it in a really cool way, because notice this time he focuses more on the leap itself to catch her in his arms instead of trying to snatch her with his webbing, all to avoid that whiplash that actually caused Gwen to die. Instead of trying to snatch her with his webbing, all to avoid.
Right there. Right there. Her head hit first. Before the web. So, in conclusion, again, I think it was the head that killed her. And not the, again, either way would have killed her. But the head is what hit first. As you see.
Avoid that whiplash that actually caused Gwen to die. Trying to snatch her with his webbing. All to avoid that
head
whiplash that actually caused.
So, in conclusion, I think it was the head that killed her. And then not the whiplash. Even though it would have probably killed her either way. So it's not so much that it was his fault because of that.
Caused Gwen to die, proving that this poor guy has been obsessing over that decision every day of his life, and that is why he sobs in relief finally. We get another little sorcerer set up for Ned when the Cloak of Levitation catches him. We actually get a little leitmotif of Doctor Strange's theme music there too. Get this man a cloak. And then on the fallen giant Captain America shield, Tom Holland, Peter, and Goblin do get out, and it is vicious. Peter prepares to kill Goblin, lifting his glider to bring down on him the same way Captain America nearly killed Iron Man in Civil War, using the tool that Peter is now standing on. This kid is moments away from going full John Walker, but Tobey Maguire Peter jumps in, grabs the glider, even though Tom Holland Peter shoves that glider even closer to him. Ultimately, he helps him see the light and to make a different choice, and so Tom Holland proves his change by hitting Norman with the anti-serum and giving him a second chance. Meanwhile, the sky opens up to dozens of glowing silhouettes, presumably other characters who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man from other universes. One of them holds a spear, looks like Kraven the Hunter. Others match the shape of Rhino. There's another one that kind of looks like Scorpion. I'm gonna go deeper into these in another video too. So Peter and Doctor Strange realize that the only way to seal up these cracks is to complete the memory wipe spell as it was intended, meaning everyone will forget Peter is Spider-Man. Notice how, whereas the runes before were thinner, more rushed written, here they are bolder and more authoritative, like the runes cast by Scarlet Witch in the WandaVision final battle. So Toby and Andrew make their final goodbyes, and Toby says, "It's what we do," recalling how Aunt May justified why you should help people. And Peter explains it all to MJ, and he promises he will come find her. Just reminds me a lot of that theme from Eternal Sunshine, how love is too powerful of a force to be bound by memory. And MJ tells Peter that she loves him, but she doesn't let him say it back to her, wagering that the first time he can say it to her on the other side, it'll be so pure and real that that could be the thing that awakens her. And then so, after the spell is complete, the world continues to know that Spider-Man exists, but the name Peter Parker means nothing to them. This is crazy, because it means that Ned and MJ still made it into MIT, but with no physical evidence of Peter Parker's history with them. So in addition to brainwashing everyone's memories, this spell must also have warped all of reality to erase documents, any kind of digital records, any physical mark that Peter Parker left on the world. I mean, does the guy have a birth certificate? A social security card? I would say that that should have to necessitate a new history to be conjured to replace the Peter history that was erased, but
yeah, if you think about it, it's like, if all that stuff is gone, no one knows where he is. If he gets an apartment like he did in the movie, how's he gonna get a job if he doesn't even have any proof that he's gone to high school or college or anything like that? How is he gonna pay for that? He's gonna have to get jobs that don't require any identification stuff.
And I hate to point this out, but if you think about it, Peter was often absent from his major events in his life, from his homecoming dance, from his field trips, from his school competitions. He was blipped for 5 years. It's depressing to realize this, but his erasure is not that disruptive to his friends' lives. I mean, essentially, this just means MJ and Ned spent more of their teenage years alone, which for MJ, reading a book by herself is just kind of who she is. Ned tinkering with his Legos is who he is. I mean, yeah, it's sadder the more you think about it, but it's true. That's why Peter makes this sacrifice, because he knows his loved ones can get by without him. And so when he finds them back in the Peter Pan coffee shop, himself a kind of Peter Pan stuck watching kids grow up and move on without him. However, MJ still wears the Black Dahlia necklace. So somewhere deep down, she still loves him. And the coffee cup she gives him reads, "We are happy to serve you," a cup that he holds on to remind himself to serve. By the way, we actually saw the Sanctum Apprentice with one of those coffee cups earlier, which was trying to fix that same artifact that Thor also broke in Ragnarok. That cup also showed up on the dashboard of the Tracksuit Mafia in Hawkeye episode 5, and Peter almost says to MJ, "I love you," but he stops himself and he waits upon seeing the Band-Aid because he doesn't want to hurt MJ anymore. So to protect her, for now, he walks away. Peter visits May's grave. You'll notice the flowers cover the birth and death dates. I guess because, as Tony Stark observed when he first met May in Civil War, we never do quite know how old May is. Happy shows up, doesn't know who Peter is, but he compares this feeling to losing Tony. And Peter sets up his new apartment. I am praying that they can find a way to make Mr. Ditkovich his landlord. You'll notice he has a GED test prep book, and that's because this guy has no academic record anymore. Also, we see he sets up his Palpatine Lego, which was the first we saw of Ned Leeds back in Homecoming. And he wears a new suit with brighter blues and swings out past 30 Rockefeller Center, where the upcoming finale of Hawkeye will be set. I don't think we'll see Spider-Man swinging in the background of that, but a guy can dream. Being a stranger to the community Peter Parker relied on is so painful, but it does force this kid to mature into the selfless hero that his forebears showed him how to be. At times, the life of a hero is a lonely one. But all those people are still there, and they may not remember, but they still love him. And one day, he will find his way home. That is everything I found in this heart-wrenching and beautiful Spider-Man film. But there's so much more I want to say about this movie, so to support our channel and help us do that, please check out one of those great merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com. That strange entitlement design is calling to you. We also got a Kingpin-inspired Long Live the King shirt. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EAVoss. Follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything Marvel. Thank you for watching. Bye.
So, yeah. That was awesome. A lot of it I did miss, again, because of the platform I watched it on, I think. But other than that, it was a good movie. I loved the second one, installment of, like, Amazing Spider-Man, and whatnot. It's been a while since I've seen the original, so most of that stuff coming into this one I would probably miss because it's been a while since I've seen those. But other than that, please let me know your thoughts on what you think, and what do you guys think? The web or the head? Because again, I'm pretty sure the head hitting is what killed her, because you saw the bloody nose. But you know, other than that, if you've seen this movie, let me know what your thoughts on it are about these, and if you can, please, and this is especially going out to you know who you are, I'm not gonna say your name, but please, if you can, one comment. I will most likely acknowledge the comment if it's in one, than if it's in two, because I'm not gonna say if you leave 3 comments or 5 separate, I am not gonna heart every single one of them. I'm gonna heart the first one I see, or the first one that has something to do with it. Because with Josh, when he did the second comment on that Venom suit, there's misinformation kind of thing, the separate comment. I thought he was talking about the video I did was gave misinformation, but it was the fact that he said something about vaccines in the video, probably magnetic and all that stuff. Oh, I think I'm talking a bit loud. Sorry. One second, let me go through my one. So, yeah. I mean, if you're replying to one, that's a little bit different. Because, you know, you're replying. But, since when he did that, like, multiple ones, it kind of throws it off. Because even if it's about the video, it can misinterpret it into something else, like I did with that comment. So if you can please do it in one comment, cool. Otherwise, don't fault me for not looking at all the comments or acknowledging the other ones, unless they're replies of if I replied to you and whatnot, you know. But other than that, sorry for the late upload, and I love you guys. I'll see you Thursday. Oh wait, no, Saturday for hopefully a super spooky Saturday. I won't forget. Hopefully I'll try my best. If I have to, I'll record it tomorrow or so at some point. That way, when I can, that way, even if it's light out, I can at least get it and prepare. You know what I'm saying? They're really looking forward to the next production. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. Love y'all.